The sad case of little Charlie Gard exposes the horrors of socialized medicine on today's episode of Trigger Warning Radio. Hello, all you deplorable monsters, and welcome to another exciting episode of Trigger Warning Radio. I am your host, Radius, and today we are going to be talking about the very sad, very horrible case of little Charlie Gard. Now, if you're not familiar with who Charlie Gard is a 10-month-old baby living in the UK, and Charlie Gard has been suffering all of his life from a very rare disease that has essentially rendered him deaf, blind, unable to move, and unable to breathe on his own. He's essentially been on life support in a hospital for pretty much all of his life. Now, his parents have, of course, been doing everything that they can to get him as much treatment as they possibly can, because obviously his parents want their baby to, survive and have some sort of a semblance of quality of life. So they've exhausted their treatment options in the UK. A UK court has essentially stated that Charlie Gard must die. The doctors must pull the plug on Charlie Gard, and this has been upheld by a quote-unquote EU human rights court. I'll leave you to ponder the irony of that statement on your own. Now, Charlie Gard's parents stumbled upon a very slim ray of hope. Apparently, here in America, there is an experimental treatment for Charlie's disease. Now, the treatment is by no means a sure thing. In fact, it's more than likely, the odds are that the treatment would not work and Charlie would die anyway with it. However, Charlie's parents, again, obviously want their baby to have every chance of survival that he possibly can. Charlie's parents raised the money to bring Charlie to the United States in order to get this experimental treatment. They raised over $1.6 million on their own. So the UK Health Service would not be funding Charlie's treatment in the US. However, the same judges that have ruled that Charlie must die have also ruled that his parents cannot take him to the United States of America for treatment. And he must be allowed to, quote-unquote, die with dignity. Now, this whole situation has caused an international uproar, of course, with none other than Pope Francis offering the services of a Vatican-owned hospital in order to help treat little Charlie. And Donald Trump himself, President Donald J. Trump, the God Emperor of America himself, has offered to do whatever he can to bring Charlie's family here to the United States so that he can receive treatment. Of course, we're all praying that little Charlie Gard is able to make it to the United States and the treatment is successful and that he's able to have some sort of life. Barring that, of course, we pray that he's allowed to spend his last days on Earth with his parents in his home. But what I want to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that Charlie's case illustrates precisely what the dangers of socialized medicine are. If you think about this entire case, this is essentially the government stating that this little boy must die. He cannot be cured. It's not worth it to use precious resources to treat him or to give him any sort of quality of life, and therefore he must be allowed to, again, die with dignity. And this is something that a lot of proponents of socialized medicine, I've found, sort of either overlook or outright dismiss when they're talking about the wonders of socialized medicine. You know, you ask any liberal what the benefits of a single payer system are, and they just absolutely gush. Oh, it's single payer system. Oh, the government pays for everything. Nobody pays for anything. Oh my God, everybody's gonna get treatment. You're not gonna have to pay for it. Blah, 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 because everybody has the right to health care. That's what it boils down to in the liberal mind. Everybody has a right to health care. Everybody has a right to free health care, and this is something that the government has to provide. If the government doesn't provide this, of course, it is a completely immoral situation. We can't not have socialized medicine and still consider ourselves a moral country, because everybody else in the world has socialized medicine. Now, the problem with this, ladies and gentlemen, considering healthcare a right, is that essentially healthcare is seen in this situation as a right that is conferred upon you by the government, as opposed to other rights, like, for example, the right to bear arms, the right to free speech, the right to not be subject to cruel and unusual punishments, the right to face your accusers, and so on and so on. Essentially, what our Bill of Rights has enshrined. These rights are not rights that come from the government. These are rights that come from the Creator, whether that's God or some sort of concept of some Mother Earth or some other intelligent being, or just by virtue of the fact that we're human. Call it whatever, wherever you want, whatever you want it to, wherever you want it to come from. That's totally up to you. But these rights cannot be taken away from you. This is not something that the government can suddenly say, hey, guess what? You no longer have the right to free speech. The government cannot come in and say, you can no longer say what you want to say. Even though they try to do that very, very frequently, and they would love to do that, that's not something that the government is able to do. However, when you look at socialized medicine, when you start to consider healthcare as a right conferred upon you by the government, well, that gives the government all sorts of power over you. Power that it should not have. I mean, once the government has control of your health care, and once the government is providing you with health care, the government can decide what the hell they're going to provide you with. The government can decide that, hey, we're not going to cover this specific treatment for you, or you need to get this specific treatment. As on the flip side, if you are a cancer patient and you need a specific cancer drug to live, but maybe you're over 60, or maybe you have a heart condition along with that, or maybe you've got some other complication, or maybe you've just got a type of cancer where the prognosis is really not that great. Maybe you've got a type of cancer where the prognosis is maybe like 50-60% or something like that. Well, the government can come in and tell you, you know what? We're not going to pay for that life-saving cancer treatment. We're not going to pay for this drug because it's just not worth it. You're not worth it at all. You're too old, or you're too fat, or you've got this condition that's going to kill you anyway, or whatever reason they want to come up with, the government can deny you that. And that is an insanely huge amount of power to place over the government, to place in the government's hands. That's an insane amount of power for anybody to have over anybody else, as Charlie Gard's family is unfortunately finding out right now as we speak. Once the government is involved in your healthcare, they control you. They control you from cradle to grave and everywhere in between. They can tell you what to do. They can tell you what not to do. The government can tell you, listen, we're going to give you healthcare all your life. However, if you pick up a cigarette, if you smoke even one time, We are going to shut down your coverage. We're not going to cover you for anything. Or the government might say, you know what? If you have more than 2 drinks of alcohol in a week, we're not going to cover you at all. Or maybe you went down to 7-Eleven, bought yourself a 64-ounce big gulp of Coke, as is your right as an American, of course. But if we've got socialized medicine, maybe the government will look at that and say, you know, you're buying these giant sugary drinks, and you're a freaking fatty, so we're not going to cover you at all. If you keep buying these drinks and you don't get your ass on the treadmill and lose some damn weight, we're not going to cover you at all for anything. And this is something that I've always talked to liberals about this. I've always asked them about this. You know, what do you think about giving the government power over life? And they literally laugh it off a lot of times. You know, they don't want to deal with the question, because the answer to that, quite frankly, is scary as hell. You have to actually acknowledge that, yes, you are giving an insane amount of power over your life to somebody who doesn't know you at all, has never met you, and in all likelihood will never meet you. You're essentially giving your life over to a panel sitting in Washington, D.C., or, you know, wherever else, and this panel this person is going to have the power over life and death for you. Again, as Charlie Gard's parents, unfortunately, are finding out. So, yeah, those are just my thoughts on the whole, this whole horrible situation. Again, I'm hoping and praying along with, I know, everybody else, that Charlie and his parents are able to make it to the United States. They're able to get the treatment that he so desperately needs, and that even if it's a small chance, at least Charlie will be given some sort of chance, and he'll be given some sort of hope for a future, for some kind of life. However brief that may be, hopefully he doesn't have to spend it wasting away in a British hospital because some bureaucrat and some judge decided that he can't go home for his final days, and he can't spend that with his parents and with the rest of his obviously loving. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for this episode of Trigger Warning Radio. I know I haven't broadcasted anything in the last couple of weeks. I've been getting over a cold of some kind, or the plague, or I'm not really sure what it was, but it was pretty horrible. If you liked what you heard, as always, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, of course. Look forward to many, many more broadcasts as well, and leave a comment in the section below if you have any thoughts on this subject. And once again, thank you for joining me for Trigger Warning Radio, and until next time, stay deplorable.